What's up, my miners of intelligence and consciousness? I'm Rick Brooks, and this is Rick's Mind. Today with me, I have guest Eric Ross, who's a PhD in cultural studies. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Dude, there's a lot I want to get into, and I think the best place to start is in the beginning, right? So what makes you want to study and teach cultural studies? And then for the folks that don't know, what is that?
That's a great question. So I've wanted to be a teacher for pretty much as long as I can remember, going back to middle school, probably. I mean, probably fifth or sixth grade, so probably right around the time I met John. That's been a goal of mine, and so I think like the what kind of audience or what students I wanted to teach has shifted over the years, but that was always a goal of mine. And I went to college with the goal of I wanted to teach middle school. Believe it or not, I wanted to teach middle school, and so I went to college for that. I studied to do that. I got my minor in education. I got my teaching license. I did my student teaching, and through my student teaching, I realized that maybe middle school wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be at.
Dude, middle school kids are the worst. I was an asshole, straight up.
I mean, they are the worst, but in some ways they're also the best. Like, there's a sort of pure honesty there with middle school kids that is can sometimes be great. But yeah, it wasn't really for me, I think. And so I applied to graduate school, and I did not get into graduate school. And so I was looking for fallback opportunities. I got a job with AmeriCorps right out of college, and I did that for 2 years in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
What is AmeriCorps?
So AmeriCorps is like a service organization. There's a lot of different programs within AmeriCorps, but basically it's like paying young people. You don't get paid very much money, but if you complete it, you get an award that you can use to pay off like your student loans or college tuition or things like that. Not a lot, but it definitely took a chunk out of my student loans. But it's a service organization through the federal government. But what I did was I worked for an organization called City Year, and they were placing young people in schools, usually in urban areas. And what they were doing, or what I was doing at the time, was like I worked with eighth graders for that year, and I was basically like an intensive like reading and math tutor for those kids. So not the high achieving kids and not the kids who were like failing the classes, but the kids who were in danger of failing. I had a group of them that I would kind of pull out and tutor. And then we also did after school stuff with them.
Okay. So just the kids right on the cusp, you're accelerating them, getting them the tools and stuff ready to enter high school.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, exactly. So the idea was like getting them up before they fall into that kind of failing range. So trying to get them to a place where they can be successful and then hopefully have some good habits going into high school. So that was what I did there. And I really thought that or like that sort of like education nonprofit world was going to be where I lived for the rest of my life. And then kind of out of nowhere, I had a former college professor who emailed me about an opportunity, another graduate school opportunity. This time it was in Florida. Like I said, I was pretty much sold on this like middle school nonprofit stuff was going to be my life. But out of deference to her, because she was a real big mentor and influence for me, I decided to, shoot my shot. And I got into this master's program in American Studies. So different from cultural studies, but American Studies at the University of South Florida. And I had most of that was paid for. And so I was like, when is this ever going to happen to me again? So
yeah, dude, you got to take that.
So moved to Florida. Mm-hmm.
The Bulls, I think that's the South Florida Bulls, right? School of Blake Bortles' son, Sunshine.
Well, Blake Bortles is a Central Florida.
Oh, shit.
Blake Bortles is a Central Florida graduate.
God, dude,
so
I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You're just bringing up the war on I-4. One of the great rivalries in college sports.
Absolutely. But no, yeah, you go down to Florida, who knows? Maybe you wrestle an alligator. Maybe, I don't know. You get, what, 2 years of just enjoying the sunshine. And I'm sorry, I'm hijacking your story and making up stuff. But
No, you're fine. I mean, that's all accurate, including the wrestling an alligator.
I knew it.
That, all that stuff is great. Yeah, I was down there for 2 years. I got a master's. I stayed a third year where I was working as an adjunct professor, which is, a professor who basically gets paid by the semester or per the class.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, at that point, I was like, this is maybe something I want to keep doing. And I applied to a couple of different PhD programs, and the cultural studies program at George Mason, what seemed like a good fit for me. And I decided to take a chance. And now at this point, I don't have really any other skills. So I'm kind of locked in now. But yeah, you asked what cultural studies is. So cultural studies is an interdisciplinary humanities field. I come from an English lit background. I know other people who come from sociology backgrounds or political science or whatever. But it is an interdisciplinary humanities field. Usually is very critical of systems and organizations. It comes from the United Kingdom. It comes from this leftist tradition in Britain, leftist academic tradition with Stuart Hall and Raymond Williams and guys like that who, your listeners can look up on their own if they want to learn more about them. But yeah, I think that I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of in a nutshell kind of the discipline.
It does. I do want to dig into a little bit about, I guess, what are some of the main ideas of the characters that you just mentioned?
Right. So the two guys I mentioned, specifically Raymond Williams and Stuart Hall. They're both British. They operated in the United Kingdom. They both since passed, but the discipline really emerges in response to Margaret Thatcher and the Conservative Party in the UK, and a lot of their policies are about what today we would call neoliberalism. So hyper individualism, competition, slashing the social safety net, all these things that Margaret Thatcher was doing in the UK at that time. And these guys came from a leftist tradition. I don't think they are these guys are certainly socialists. And thinking about what happened, the United Kingdom, for a long time had a strong social safety net. It had strong labor rights and whatever. Margaret Thatcher comes along and starts to chip away at all of that. And seemingly some of these policies that are happening, it's not like they weren't contested, but at the same time, these things that people thought were sort of stuck in place, or this was how it was always going to be, or we had won these labor rights or whatever, and we're just going to keep them now, are suddenly being chipped away at, and people aren't sure how that was happening. And so cultural studies emerges as a way of thinking about that, imagining the old forms of the left or socialism or whatever you want to call it, don't seem to be working anymore. So how can we kind of adapt moving forward, if that makes any sense?
Actually, that makes quite a bit of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming Thatcher, this is in the 80s, right? It's in the 80s.
Yeah, so late 70s, early 80s, yeah.
We got Reaganomics in the United States. We're running. Wait, that's Reagan would have been. Sorry, my God, John, where am I messing up? Where am I messing up?
I was rolling my eyes just at the thought of Ronald Reagan being president, which I was not alive for, but scarred me enough. No, he was. I think he was elected in 1980-ish, 81 too.
Pull it
like
up.
That. Oh, well.
But yeah, so this is we've got this we got a bunch of the conservatives running the show, and in London they're slashing these social programs, and these people are kind of pushing back, and they're creating theories and they're teaching, right, and that's how this was born, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
And so, what are you like? Okay, go ahead, John.
Reagan was he was president from 81 to 89. Damn. So right in there, just the 80s.
Yeah. Reagan smash. I mean, every time someone says Ronald Reagan, like that Family Guy skit where he's just trying to smash down the Berlin Wall always pops into my head. Reagan sleepy. Every time. I can't.
That. That's so good.
But so yeah, I know I totally yeah. Yes, trickle down economics. That's another thing that comes to mind. But I'm with you there. And so what are you? I mean, you're going to have to come up with your thesis. You're this just about there. You're a professor in my eyes. You're much more educated than I am. So what types of things are you looking at within the cultural studies realm on your thesis?
Yeah, so I'm working on my dissertation right now, actually, and I'm interested in museums, and in particular, what I see as a kind of trend that's happened in museums in the 21st century, and the last 20 years or so, is what I'm calling activist museums. So I feel like museums have moved. I know that museums have moved from being a place where they are just presenting these objects and they're trying to be very neutral about it, to now you see more and more newer museums and newer exhibitions have a viewpoint or are upfront about the fact that they're not neutral, that they want to have some sort of outcome that comes as a result of this. And we can see this in like sort of both sides, right? Like there are museums that would be considered like progressive museums that want to see like certain social justice things happen. And we can also see like more traditionally conservative museums. So here in DC, there's a giant new Museum of the Bible that opened up a few years ago. I want to say in 2017, maybe. I think I was here when it opened, so it's not that old. But that is like a very explicit, like evangelical museum that has a particular agenda. And in their case, it's like reminding America or about the importance of the Bible in American history and asserting that like the Bible is still important in the present, which I think would be very different from, say, a museum like the National Museum of African American History and Culture, also here in DC, which would be kind of a more progressive version of that. So I'm interested in that shift, or what I see as a shift that museums are doing. They've moved from being like object forward, object driven, to more idea driven, to more idea focused.
Do you think that this is a good? Do you think that this is a good thing?
I don't know yet, to be honest with you. I see it happening, and certainly if there are like, I'm not biased, or I am, I have my own biases and my own ways of seeing the world. And so when I see things that echo my viewpoints, certainly I'm more inclined to think of that as a good thing. But I don't know. I hesitate to come down one way or another. I just see it as something that's happening. And one of the things I'm interested in is looking at, what has changed that's made this happen. Why are museums doing this? Why like new museums really, especially? I don't know. I hesitate to say whether it's good or bad.
I don't know. I mean, I have my own personal beef with museums, and it is that like, why do we have so many like masterpieces? Like when I went to the Louvre, there's so much awesome shit that you just kind of become overwhelmed. Like, why do all these like, I'm only speaking in the realm of art, right? But why do we think that it's important to put all these masterpieces in one consolidated area? Shouldn't they be in like a town? The artists that made them did not. I don't think that. I mean, obviously, there's some element of competition, wanting to stay relevant and wanting to. Or if you're a high creative, always wanting to produce. If you ask an artist, like, why do you create? It's like, why? Because I'm an artist. Why do you breathe, bro? Because you're alive. This is what I do. And I feel like they wanted some of their pieces. And again, I could be complete. This is just my own personal beef. Like, I think that they would want their masterpieces, like, kind of viewed by themselves and for you to really have an opportunity to take it all in. And yet we just shove it all into one place. And you're like, all right, take a look at all this. I mean, I just don't know if that's super conducive. I think it's, plus a lot of the museums and, Western culture or just like shit that we've all stole. Like, I love going to France and looking at it, and all I can think about is like Napoleon's great terror of stealing the obelisk from the Egyptians, and I mean, it's nutty. But I mean, they're cool. I'm just saying, I got to throw that out there as well. So I don't know. That's my beef. That's my main beef with museums. I do think they're amazing. I wouldn't want to get rid of them, but I think that maybe we're doing it wrong. And I guess fuck it. I'll say, I think it's bad. I think it's bad that we're going to try and put ideologies and I don't know, maybe not opinions, but like, I don't like that, like, you can go to a conservative museum over here and you can go to a liberal one, and there's an anarchist one if you go down Debo Street and take a look. I don't know if I like that. I mean, I feel like a combination of it all should be presented if we're gonna do that instead of like self-segregating. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. So I'm on the train that says it's bad. But again, this is just an emotional decision. I haven't put a lot of thought into it or anything.
No, I think that's totally fine. And you bring up some good points because, I think one of the challenges, especially for like what I would consider to be like a more progressive museum. If a museum wants to be kind of a more like a progressive activist museum, like, how do you do that when the whole idea of the museum is wrapped up in this history that you're talking about of like imperialism and colonialism, and the very first ever museums as we understand them emerge in Europe in the like late 1700s, early 1800s, and they are, full of stuff that they stole from other places. And the idea is like, look at all this cool stuff. And, this is the power of France, or this is the power of Britain, or whatever. And so like, is it even possible for a museum to like get past that? Should we just get rid of all of them and like redistribute the stuff in other ways? I don't know. I mean, ways like the object is like the original sin of the museum. Like, me personally, I don't give a shit if I walk into a museum, if I see like, the real, here at the Smithsonian, they've got like Abraham Lincoln's hat. Like, I don't need to see the real hat. It doesn't make a difference to me if it's a real hat or if it's a reproduction of the real hat. Like,
Yeah.
So like the idea that so many museums and so many people who visit museums expect to see like the authentic thing. I have a problem with that sort of attitude to begin with, because I think it leads to all these other problems about like, we have to get the thing,
I don't know. That you bring up a good point. I feel like I would want to see the real shit. I'm probably in that camp. Yeah. We also have to consider that, I think that sometimes we as humans kind of like to live in la la land. And the reality is, and I talk about history a lot on this show, we've been doing shit like this since time immemorial. We go over to some other country, some other kingdom, and we rape and pillage and steal, empty their coffers and bring it back and bring back a bunch of slaves. I mean, we don't do all of those things now, thank God. But actually, no, fuck it. We'd probably still do most of those things in other parts of the world. But I don't know if we can ever get away from that. I think that that's just something that's uniquely human and terrible. And I don't know if we've evolved or will ever get past doing terrible things. So for us to, I don't know if it's something that I get upset about necessarily. I just think it's just like part of the flawed human condition, so to speak. If that makes any sense.
I mean, I do. And I think I think that's fair. I don't know if it's necessarily like human nature to do those things, but certainly like as long as there's scarcity, as long as like there are resources that people need, as long as, whatever, like, we've just lived through 20 years of adventures in oil here in the U.S., like because of scarcity, because of the sort of peak oil and that and so I don't know. I like to imagine. I'm a long-term optimist, and so I like to think that someday we could get to a sort of post-scarcity future. I don't know what that looks like, but yeah.
The only way that we get to a post-scarcity future, in my opinion, is we need to go to space. It's the only way. There's not enough. The way that our society is set up is consumerism, especially in the West, right? That's what we do. We consume. We produce things. We produce like culture, and we produce, like Americans' biggest export is its culture. But like as far as like manufacturing, we lean on other people, and then we consume those things. The only way, if we go to space and we eventually are able to like call it or technologically advance enough to do that, and we can start colonizing planets and spread out amongst the galaxy, then there would be probably enough. There would be enough for everyone. And we wouldn't, I mean, maybe on certain planets you might have some beef, but you might be able to find a planet that's like, 3 times the size of Earth, and you have like, a few million people on there. Like you're going to be fine for a hot second, and then you continue to develop, and then maybe you consume that world and go on to the next one. Like to me, that's the only way. I mean, if we changed our mindset and we were all able to take a little less, then maybe. But I don't see if we can't do that. Obviously, like we can't do that. I'm not going to bring you. There's a certain elephant in the room that kind of proves that we're incapable of doing that. And that's the only way I see it. Otherwise, things will just kind of continue along the same lines, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I like to be optimistic about the future of space as well.
Yeah.
But I think even that's going to take a massive, the way I see it is going to take a massive sort of collective effort if we want to do that. Like, I don't think that, just having, our handful of space billionaire daddies is going to be what gets us there. I think that's going to be a much more collective effort to make that sort of thing happen. But
why do you feel like it would need to be a collective effort? You need financing, and so you already have the minds. All the people that are really, really smart and believe in this are already working on that. All right. You're getting the funding, and now you've got the private sector going in. It just takes all of those brilliant minds and all of that money to create a system. And then you need to be able to repeat that system, and you need to take a small step. The first step would be to have like bases on the moon, right? And use that as like a staging point. You'd have, maybe build nuclear reactors on the moon to have energy and whatnot. And that way there, you can use that energy, and you have the bases, and you use that as a launching point to go to Mars. And then from Mars, this isn't, it probably wouldn't happen overnight, and it might take a few generations, but I don't know how much collectively it would need to be. And I think that that's probably what's going to end up happening, is a lot of people are going to be frozen out if you start mining and stuff on these planets and then bringing that back. You'd probably, if I was going to do it, I would use the taxpayer money, set up a mining corporation, then get all of those resources and cut the public out. That's what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm saying I would do that. But actually there's something going on like that right now. I'm sorry to bring you down, dude. Man, I'm being a bummer right now, dude. John, I'm sorry.
Normally, I'm the bummer cast, dude. That's my job. Okay,
I've been doing some research, but we're probably going to start mining the moon in the next like 50 years.
I was going to say, at least, Elon Musk, and I don't know about Bezos. Elon Musk exists because of federal tax subsidies. Like, all of his companies are not profitable and have been on the edge of solvency for their entire existence. Like, Tesla's not profitable because of their Bitcoin holdings, and then because of the electric car tax subsidies.
I'm gonna need you to pull that up, John. I think you might be talking out of your ass there. Sorry.
No, what I was going to say is I think when I talk about collective effort, I feel like all the biggest kind of technological leaps in the last 100, 200 years have all been through like large collective efforts, whether that's through like public funding or otherwise. But you think of like the internet was partly developed by the U.S. military and like through like massive public investment, the first moon landings. And so I think that, I think that these space billionaires can do a lot and they can push the conversation. Absolutely. But I also think it's going to be, I don't know. I think I just think it's going to take more than like Jeff Bezos's singular will to get us there.
I think you're right.
So here you go. 2020 Tesla net profit or net income was $3.3 billion. And they made 1.6 of that was solely from regulatory credits. Their net income only from selling cars was $721 million. So if they had, and then the rest of it came from profits from holding and selling Bitcoin. So yeah, they're not a car company. They're just a hedge fund at this point.
But wait, they made profit $721 million.
No, their net income selling cars was $721 million. Their tax subsidies were $1.6 billion, and then total altogether, their net was $3.3 billion. But had they not had Bitcoin or tax subsidies, they would be. There's no way they could exist, honestly.
I don't know about that. I mean, they're not in the red; they're in the black. They're profitable. Whether like whichever way you do that,
I mean, they're profitable from taking subsidies and from taking just essentially tax money. They're existing off of corporate welfare.
I don't know. I don't think that. I mean, if we brought on, I don't think that you or I are super business savvy enough to really like get down into the nitty gritty. But I think they're in the black, dog, like for sure. I think so.
I don't know. I don't know.
I really don't think there's like
Daddy Musk is a snake oil salesman. Like he should have an old cart rolling through tiny towns in the old West.
But he hosted SNL though. You see him host SNL?
Right? This is true.
So he's got that going for him.
You have a very strange hatred of Elon Musk, and I don't like it. I love the guy. Stop it. Stop it now.
It's not a hatred. It's not a hatred. It's a healthy skepticism that has evolved into a fully formed opinion based on learning about him.
I don't know. I feel like you need to pop open some business books right now, and because I really think he's. Let me just. So if it's net. I'm pretty sure
net is just total income, no accounting for expenses.
No, net is net earnings, I believe. To find out what his net earnings is, it's calculated as sales minus the cost of goods sold, dog. So he's covered his expenses. So he's made $721 million selling cars. That's minus all expenses. Plus, he's getting.
I'm going to look into this some more. I don't think that's right because.
No, I definitely am right, dude. Yes, fuck you, John. Yes, love Elon Musk.
Oh my god,
that feels so good, dude. Oh my god, this feels so good.
It won't last.
I'm pretty sure I'm right. It had to really, really get in there. Anyways, we're way off topic. Eric, I'm sorry.
Hey, that's okay. You guys want to go to space? What do you think space is like?
I think it's a vacuum, and it's freezing cold, and it's a very anti-harsh human climate. Like it's not. We're not built for it, bro. Not at all. I do want to go to space, and I used to a lot of time looking at like planets and stuff like Kepler 22b, which is I believe in the Andromeda galaxy. And it's like 25 light years away, and we'll never get there. And I got really depressed because it's like an Earth-like planet that doesn't rotate. And half of the planet is shaded, and the other half of the planet is is in light. It never rotates, and we're never going to be able to get there. But it has water on it. That's what NASA says. Sorry, John,
Well, that's
you were
nice.
going to say something.
No, I was just going to say something dumb about how space is cold, but you already did that. So.
But yeah,
I don't want to go to space until we got artificial gravity. I was just talking to John about this. I get wicked motion sick. So until we get artificial gravity figured out, I'm staying here. But
I don't know what
everybody else going to space.
I don't know who's looking into that. There's got to be some. We'll have to find a scientist that's looking into like artificial gravity and get him on the show. We're just not like super advanced. But one of the things I do want to say within 2 minutes of talking to you, Eric, is that you're just a much better human than I am. Like you, dude. I felt. I was like, man, this guy. He wants to give back. He was helping underprivileged kids. He's tutoring them. He's interested in like saving people and putting them on the right path. And he's studying museums and like you care. And I like that. And then I'm over here when I was your age, like how the fuck do I get rich? I was trying to get into like pyramid schemes and like that's pretty much all I cared about. And I feel like I missed those nurturing years. And
you're just trying to ride Daddy Musk's. Trying to ride his rocket to space.
You will accept Elon Musk as an extremely intelligent businessman, an entrepreneur, and an engineer, sir. Sorry. Enough.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. I'm jumping in again. Sorry. How much money did he get? So his family's fortune, right, comes from having land given to them from like native people in South Africa that just happened to have an emerald mine on it, right? And then, I mean, Jesus Christ, you give like, what did his family gave him like $500,000, not including his trust fund to start PayPal? You gave me $500,000, I'd be a billionaire. Like anybody with half a brain could do that.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to comment.
He never founded Tesla. He bought it from the two engineers who actually created it and then voted them off the board and removed them from the masthead.
Right.
And then also he was the money dude that started a banking company.
Okay. First off, this is. I'm gonna close this right now, John. You're gonna have to mute your mic. We have a guest. This is Fireside Chat, and we will discuss this on a Fireside Chat, sir. You're wrong.
The special
you're
Elon
not
Musk
all wrong.
edition.
I will say this is the last we're talking about it. I will say this. You bring up some valid points. I already know that, and this conversation is paused until a Fireside Chat. Eric. My apologies, sir. John is out of control.
I love it. I'm looking forward to your fully researched debate about this.
I won't research a goddamn thing, dude.
Yeah, but I'm an optimist. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about people, even though I also am an introvert. So most of the time I don't want to talk to any of the people that I'm optimistic about. But, I don't know. I feel positively about most humans.
I'm very much an optimist too. I see the good in the world and I see the good in people. Now I do have certain predilections toward like veering towards the negative, and maybe sometimes I might get caught up in a conspiracy theory or three. But for the most part, I would say like I think that humanity will eventually pull its stuff together. I think that the biggest like threat to the world is greed. I think it and a bit of a lack of discipline and self-belief. I don't know why a lot of people don't believe in themselves, and I also think fear. There's a lot of things, but those like I think people are really afraid as well, and they don't believe in themselves, and even worse, they don't love themselves. And so those are some of the problems that like I see in the world, and also a lack of community. I feel like sometimes, like I'm not a huge Redditor. I'm more of a lurker, but I'll be on there and I'll see like some subreddit about like how shitty America is or something, and like kind of bothers me a little bit because like we're a community, we're a community of 300 million people, and we have our flaws, but like at the end of the day, like we're a community, and I wish we all got along more and along better. And like, I wish we could talk to each other and not be so angry and fearful of one another. And like, sometimes, like, those are the things that I wish we could. I don't know if we were ever in like a golden era. Like, we have a bunch of demons and problems, but like, I feel like I wish we could just like put certain things in the past. Like, I wish we could just like tomorrow, everyone just say, all right, we're done. We've done some bad things. We've treated my people wrong, and we've treated your people wrong, and your people wrong. But we're all Americans, and this door is shut, and we move forward. We got to figure out how to get into outer space, and we got to figure out how to clean up these different neighborhoods that have just had giant problems with drugs and gang violence. Like, we're going to invest in those communities, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to figure our shit out, like that. I wish that could happen, and I think that maybe it will someday. It's more fun to think about things if, somehow we could do that. I don't know how that happens, but I am all for that happening. And I think that everyone would be.
Yeah, I think so too. And I wanted to pick up on a couple of things you said. I think one of the reasons, like, you're talking about, like, people don't, a sort of lack of confidence, or like a lack of, I think you said, like, people we don't love ourselves. I think part of that problem is we have this whole like media industry that tells us not to, which I think is a problem. Certainly, where like, you're not good enough at this, you don't look good enough to do that. That sort of thing. So I see that as kind of an issue. And then I definitely agree. I don't think that people need to be, or I would like to live in a world where people aren't afraid of each other. And I find that like having conversations with other people, when you start to see other people as like human beings, it makes that a lot better. Whereas when you're seeing someone through Twitter or whatever, I don't have Twitter. I used to have Twitter, but I used to just get mad every time I logged on, and I got rid of Twitter because I was just getting mad all the time. And that wasn't good for me. But like interacting with people in real life, I think it's easier for you to get along that way. Although I don't necessarily want to live in a world where there is like a just sort of mass consensus and everybody gets along, because I think that disagreement is important, right? I think that disagreement is part of, I think to me, that's like the core of what a sort of democracy is about, is that kind of disagreement. And so I don't necessarily want to be in a world where everybody like gets along and we all agree with each other. But yeah, I mean, I think we're mostly, you and I are mostly on the same page, at least as far as like, that's something I think that people want. That's something that I want, certainly.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same page in a lot of. I'm glad that you pointed that out. That is something that I celebrate as well, is discourse, disagreeing respectfully. And we don't see that, right? And or you have your views, I have mine, and that's the end of it. Because you're not ever going to convince the Pope that Jesus isn't the Son of God. You're not going to convince a crazy person, and not that the Pope's a crazy person. Shout out to the Pope. I don't know why I said that, but yes, I agree. I think I don't want to. I like to disagree with people from time to time, because it opens my perspective, and some challenges what my way of thinking. John, yes.
Going to say, speaking of disagreement, John's got something.
I was going to say, in the spirit of bringing the community together, we were both right about Elon Musk, or at least about Tesla. Tesla did turn a profit in 2020. However, that net profit of $721 million is because of $1.58 billion of revenue selling regulatory credits, not from cars. So they both were profitable, but if they hadn't have been, they would have had an enormous loss. So
okay, well, I just have to say this. In business, you make money whichever way you can, man. Listen, when I was running cocaine from Mexico to the United States, when the shipment got busted, Maybe I was running. I'm just kidding, folks. Like that is. I never ran cocaine.
Hey,
I've never broken.
I know you're
any
not
laws.
profitable for a long time, but I don't know. If you're a car company, maybe you should make your money selling cars.
Number one, John, fuck off.
I don't know.
That's all I have to say. You're muted again.
Fucking off. Bye-bye.
He's muted. He's muted. Eric, I am so sorry about this. Listen, you're a friend of John's, and that's why he's being just super snarky today, because he knows he can get away with it.
I was going to say, substitute teacher, John is showing off.
I'm also always snarky on the podcast, too.
Because we go back a long ways.
I need a mute button on this. Is what I'm just kidding. That's too much power. I can't. I would be. I couldn't do that. But anyways, we're way off topic again. But yes, man. I'm glad that you're there. We need more people like you. We need more people like you. I like you. You're a good dude. But we got to get back into the professorship and the cultural studies. And you're studying museums. That's where we were before we got way off topic. So you live in DC, and I'm curious, like, what kind of, how are you collecting data for your thesis?
I'm doing a couple of things. So I visit a lot of museums. That's like thing number one, is I go to a lot of these things.
That's super, man. That's so sad. I would hate that.
So I do that a lot. I also talk to a lot of people who work at these museums, who like put on the exhibitions. I've done interviews with those folks, talking about like, what some of their ideas were behind it, what the design process was like. That sort of thing. I do a lot of archival stuff. So I'm looking at, some of these museums, like what are people saying about them in newspapers and magazines and things like that, reviews. So I would say that those are kind of the big sort of three things that I'm looking at, as I'm talking to the people who work on them. I'm going to visit them as a visitor and seeing like, what's my experience in these things? How do I interpret what's happening? And then looking at some of the other documentation that like other folks have done about this kind of stuff or these kinds of places.
Are there a lot of studies about this? Can we call it can we just say it the radicalization of museums? That feels sexy, and I want to say that. Have there been a lot of studies on this?
I like it. I would say that there has been a lot of people who have written about the way this happens in art museums. There's been a lot of press around that, especially because there's been some high-profile controversies around art museums in the last few years. I'm more interested in like history museums specifically, and so there aren't a ton of people who do the kind of work that I do, but there are people who kind of have done things related to it. But like my specific interest, I think it's me and. You can probably count on one hand the other number of people who are like interested in this kind of stuff too.
John.
So you were saying art museums. That actually just happened today, the day that we're recording this. The Sackler family, who started Purdue Pharma, the Met in New York has decided to remove the Sackler family's name from any wings that were donated by them because of their connection to the opioid crisis.
Yeah, I saw that story as well.
Wait, quick question though. If I'm the Sackler family and they remove my name from the wing I donated, can I tear the wing down?
No.
That seems only fair though. And I'm not saying listen, I'm just saying I'm just saying this. You fucking took my money and let me do this, and now that shit has gone sideways, and you found out it was drug money that I was telling doctors to push these, essentially heroin, and I got in trouble.
They should have done their research beforehand.
You still fucking took the money. Like, shame on you too. Like, you can claim you didn't know, but you could have looked into someone when they had their hand out. And honestly, the reason they donated it was because it's going to be an awesome tax break. But seriously, like, just because like you're like, oh, this doesn't look good. Like I'm going to take it. Fuck you, man. You still took the fucking money.
They took their names off of seven wings or seven exhibit halls that were all donated from them or their foundations, including the wing that housed the Temple of Dender. I don't know what that is.
I don't know what I would
but
do.
that's in the byline on the New York Times.
I
I mean,
know.
but this is the
temple.
controversy, right? Like this is the whole thing is that like, I mean, like Rick, you're right. Like this is something that people have also been talking about is like actually also maybe fuck the Met too, because like they're taking this money and not only is it like, it's a tax break for the Sackler family, but it also is like major press for them, right? Like they can be like, look at all this money we've donated to the arts, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, so like there are lots of people, like there are activists and protesters in New York City who are talking about like actually maybe fuck the Met too, and you can't like this is not, you know, like good for you I guess for taking the name off, but also like fuck you for taking the money in the first place because they knew, of course they know.
I mean,
the Temple of Dender is an act that ironically is a actual Roman temple that was built in Egypt. So it's now in New York. So kind of goes along with what you were saying, Eric.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot to unpack here. Because listen, I don't know a lot about, all I know about, what was the name of the family again? It's already escaping me.
The Sackler family.
The Sackler family. Like, yes, they're Purdue Pharma, evil, you know, getting people addicted to prescription grade Oxy or Oxycontin. What I think that's the correct family, right? Okay. You know, you got to they're making their living, they're making their money. I can't say that if I was in their position, that I would have done anything different. I'm a deeply flawed person and like, I love money. So, but what I don't like is that, the museum gets off like scot-free. It's like, we got everything that we wanted. So if I ever get rich and I decide to donate to get an awesome tax break, it's going to be in the fucking clause. If you take this money and I get canceled or something bad happens to me, my name has to stay on there, or else you don't get it, no matter what, or I get to sue you. I think it only seems fair. What are your thoughts?
We're talking about like an evil institution in the Met and an evil family in the Sacklers. So like, you know, I honestly fuck them both. I don't really give a shit.
Why is the Met evil in your opinion? We are way over my skis. I have no clue. I'm very ignorant to this.
No, I mean, I think for like everything you've already talked about is they didn't seemingly have a problem taking Sackler family money for this kind of stuff. As John already pointed out, they have apparently this temple from Egypt, which who knows like what the provenance is on that, like if how that was acquired. And then they're always popping up with they every once in a while they have these, you know, they'll do these big exhibitions and they sort of court controversy because for the press, I think, in a lot of ways. Like they'll do controversial things because it gets them in the press and it gets people in the door. And, you know, and like you said before, talking about art museums, they've got all this stuff in there. It's not free to go into the Met. You got to pay to go into the Met. And it's like, you know, they're sort of hoarding all this stuff and keeping it away from other people. And yeah, I don't know. It gets into the idea of just the art museum. And like I said before, how do you make a museum that's good, but is also, when the whole idea of a museum is tied up in all of this stuff. But it looks like John has something to say.
Yes. Temple of Dender, 1963, was given to, I don't know how given it was, but moved from Egypt to New York to the Met as a way, Jackie Kennedy was somehow involved in it, but the idea was to save it because it was considered a UNESCO heritage project. Because it was built in 15 BC by the Roman governor of Egypt, Patronus Augustus. So there you go.
Sounds like a chill dude.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Yeah, this is I'm assuming this is like the Met Gala where the whole AOC thing went down as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's the same one. All right. Well, I mean, yeah, I fucking hate him because I didn't get a ticket, dog. Like I'm just kidding. No. Yeah. Museums. Who would have thought that they were so tricky? You know, if you really think about it. I love them though. I don't feel guilty for loving them. I think that it's a good place to go and be inspired and be in awe, especially
Yeah,
the historical ones.
yeah. I mean, I admit that I love them too, and I don't feel guilty about it. And I think part of it to me is that these are still public spaces. They're some of the last like kind of big public spaces where you can go and you might run into people who are very different from you,
Hmm.
interact with them, people from different parts of the world, from different parts of the country, from different classes, all of that kind of thing. And I think, for all their problems, they still have the ability to inspire, to motivate you to do something, to be
Yeah.
like me. I want to make the world a better place, right? So like museums are
Hmm.
um, part of that inspiration, I think.
You bring up an interesting thing when you said they allow people to interact from people from all walks of life. I honestly think that that's a bit of our problem now as a country. Like, you have a lot of highly educated people, make a lot of money, that are in these cities, right? And they don't really leave those cities because they might go to the suburbs and commute in, vice versa. And you have a lot of there's some educated people out in the rural areas. I have friends that are super country, and
For sure.
but they are not going into the cities. They're like, I'm not going to go into Portland or San Francisco or whatever. Like, it's crazy down there's homes, terrified. So they we stay away and we self isolate, and we don't get the only viewpoints that we get are from people that think like us, and the only decisions that we see relevant are the ones that pertain to us. And if you look at like the map of our country, right? All of the rural, like kind of flyover states are all red, and they are some very serious issues like land use issues, and whether we should open up. I mean, I'm thinking about it from like a hunting perspective because that's an activity that I engage in. But like, can we like this species is like Montana just filed a federal request to have the grizzly bear removed from the federal endangered species list because the game is, and Google me on that because I could be full of shit. But anyway, so that's a huge issue, and like if you have someone like that doesn't live there, it would be like, that's a travesty, but they might not know the facts. And so I look at like, I think that I don't really think we have I think we have, I don't think that the like race is super terrible. I don't think like it's the worst thing in the world. I think we've gotten a lot better than we are, in my opinion, from where we used to be. But I think that the biggest divide that we see now is rural versus urban, right? Especially when it comes to politics. And I don't know how you would get these two groups to ever interact together. I don't know how we solve that, John.
Yeah, so you are right. 2 days ago, you like hearing that, don't you? 2 days ago, the governor of Montana filed a lawsuit, with the federal government to have grizzlies removed from the endangered species list because they say that grizzly populations have risen significantly and there have been a very large increase in attacks on livestock and humans too.
You heard it here first on Rick's Mind, folks. We're bringing breaking
Yeah,
news.
I was going to say that I think, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a quote unquote flyover state. John and I met in Indiana. It's where I'm from and lived for a long time. But now I live in DC. And DC is kind of a unique place because people from all over the country come here, and they come here to visit our museums, and they come here to see the monuments and the memorials and all of that. And so maybe a place like DC is different from a museum in New York or Portland or whatever, because we have a lot of people who are coming from all over the country and all over the world to come and see these things and to come and visit. And so I think that this is a place, you walk into the National Museum of American History. It's right next to the Washington Monument. It's not that far from the White House. You can see the Capitol from there. You could go in there and you can see people with MAGA hats, and you can see people who don't speak English, and you can see people who are like leftists going through there and like all of that. And so like DC is really maybe kind of a unique situation in that way, but the people who come here are often concentrated in that sort of like downtown National Mall, Celebrate America place, and they don't necessarily go to other parts of the city. So like where I live, for example. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. That sort of urban rural divide. Yeah, but I think, yeah, I don't know what I think. I don't know what I think. I think you're right about that. And yeah, and it's complicated because I think you're right on the one hand that like, yeah, there are lots of times where things will, something will make a headline will come up and it'll be like something in this part of the country, people want to do this. And people in other parts of the country might be like, that's horrible, but they don't understand what it's like on the ground in that place. But at the same time, I also, but sometimes the people who live in those places need an outsider perspective on that problem to get it. So I don't know if it's necessarily always going to be like I don't know, take this grizzly bear problem, for example. People in Montana, it sounds like, have some legitimate grievances against the grizzly bear. It sounds reasonable in that sense. But like, let's say hypothetically that Montana is like one of the only places where the grizzly bears continue to exist in the wild. And so like, in that sense, like, yeah, the people there like are having all these problems with it, but like, maybe this is, if you zoom out, it's like a much more complicated issue. So I think that I agree. I think there's that urban rural divide is pretty significant and is not going away anytime soon. But I also think it's complicated, right? I think it's not necessarily a us versus them kind of a thing, that there's a kind of something to be gained, I think, from sharing those different perspectives, kind of to circle back to what we were talking about before.
I think there's two problems with that example, because that's definitely not the case. Like they're in British Columbia.
Oh, I'm sure it's not the case. I'm just making it
definitely.
up.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm trying to think of when it comes to getting okay, here's one case where I think that it's bad to get an outside perspective, but I'm not going to say bad. Okay, when it comes to like policing tactics, I do not think that someone that is a keyboard warrior or somebody that has never had a gun pointed in their face or like has any experience with a firearm, I do not think that you should. I think your voice should not be super loud, because you don't know, you'd have no idea like what's going on. I think if you're in the military, or you have some sort of combat, like you've trained to kill people, then like you might be one that should be in this conversation. But like if you're trying to set policies, or like you can't use chokeholds or anything, like well, why not? Like you know what I'm saying? Like I just feel like that there's sometimes when we get hyper emotional about things and we're not necessarily thinking. I think that would be a case where it's like, well, maybe you should shut the fuck up because you don't know what's going on here. There's much more to the story. It's much more complicated to that. So maybe like in certain instances like that, I feel like, there's certain people that should raise their hand that might understand that, because I've never had a gun pointed at me, and I've never been in a situation where I've like pointed a gun at someone, and like, so I don't want to set policies for those people. There's got to be a panel of people that have like had to do that so we could get the best training and figure out the best tactics. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think so. Like, I guess to kind of further illustrate that, like, so here in DC, there have been calls for police reform in Washington D.C., but but there are also parts of the city where people want more police. So they want more cops on the street. They want more law enforcement there because of for a variety of different reasons. And so, I don't live in those communities where those people want that, where they are
those predominantly the Black communities?
Some of them, yes.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, DC is a minority city, but so it's not all of the like Black neighborhoods in DC, but there are definitely Black neighborhoods in DC where they want more police on the streets for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't live in those neighborhoods. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. That was like part of my issue with a little bit of like the BLM movement was like that rhetoric was terrible, and I don't think that that's representative of like a lot of the Black community. Like, because there's still a lot of like there's still a lot of inner cities that like they're like, no, we probably should have more cops, like maybe better training, but let's not get rid of them. And we're like where I'm from in Portland, we're beginning to experience like, oh fuck, this was not a good idea. Like it has a lot of people in the police force resigned. Their morale's at an all-time low, and there was just like some cops just had to murk some dude that was John pulled that up, driving down I-5 and was carjacking people. And I saw a video on, by the way, here's a good Instagram follow. Oregon looks like shit, I think. I saw the whole video. It was on for like, I don't know, 15 minutes. Like, it was crazy. I watched, it was, I don't know why I'm broadcasting this, but anyways, I watched the cops in action take this psycho out. And then the papers were like, we're looking into like, why weren't the cops there fast enough? Like, this is crazy. And it's like, because we just fucking told all of them to go to hell. We've lost a lot of our force. And like, these are the ramifications of, or like, when we're not thinking about what's going on, like good people get hurt. All right. Sorry, John. Go ahead.
Oh, no. So that shooting, it was in Portland. The guy, the cops were called by the owner of a coffee shop on West Burnside. The man walked up to the side door, pointed a gun at him, demanded his keys. So he said, he pointed the gun like, I'm not fucking with you. Give me the keys. He stole a car and then went on a rampage down I-5. But the guy was shot by the cops. I don't think he was dead on sight, but I think he died later. So there you go.
Yeah. There's a lot of crazies, but I mean, we're getting a little too political. We're making a conscious effort not to be a political podcast. We're going to be talking about aliens and Bigfoot and also ghosts, demons. Are there unicorns? Maybe. I don't know. We're going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff. We're going to try and stay away from politics because they suck, dude. But I will talk politics with you, Eric. I like you.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, I think I agree. I think that this is a well, I mean, first I want to say that, like, generally I don't like the cops. All
I hate them too, dog. I love them, but like, we need them, but fuck them. I get it, but we need them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that, like, like, who am I as an outsider to tell different neighborhoods within my city, like, what they need to do, how they ought to conduct themselves. That said, I also think that there are alternative solutions to this than more police. You talked earlier about like investing in those communities or improving a social safety net to a point where people aren't committing sort of crimes of desperation. There are always going to be people out there who are, who are going to be
bad.
Bad. That's a great way to put it. Who are going to be bad. But I think that you can cut down on a lot of that with alternative methods. Dude. But anyway, we're not talking politics, so that's fine.
In closing, I agree with you. We've done nothing to invest in these communities. We've done absolutely nothing. Because you know why? Because we don't care. We don't give a shit. It's away from the news. In the 80s and 90s, a lot of the Democratic Party's funding came from wealthy land developers, and what they essentially tried to do was to crack down and incarcerate all of the problems and over police it. And then you take away these young black men and you put them in jail, and you take them away from their family, uproot them, whatever. Maybe they're selling drugs. It doesn't matter, right? Give them ungodly sentences with the hopes that you would be able to gentrify and develop these neighborhoods for a profit. And that's what happened. And we get to a point now, and that's probably not all that happened. That's just what I've kind of researched. Eric, maybe back me up on this. I don't know, John. I could be full of shit, folks. So take everything I'm saying with the greatest salt. But and then you have other in New York passing the stop and frisk laws. Maybe that'll stop it. Violating people's rights. But we've never invested. We've never said like, hey, how can we intelligently figure out how to save some of these kids, how to entice them to do better and or fund projects or make the schools better, or move things around. Like, we've never done that, I don't think. And I also could be lying there, but to my knowledge, we haven't. I hope that we have, but to my knowledge, we haven't done anything. And so it is what it is. It's depressing, and we're done with politics, and that's why we're done.
So what do you think of the deal with? What do you think the deal is with Bigfoot,
bro?
You guys ever see him out there in the PNW?
No, I have not. But I will say this: I am 100% a believer, and let me tell you why. Life is more fun believing that there is a 8-foot bipedal forest gorilla that lives in the Pacific Northwest. It's more fun. And I'm going to continue to believe it till I die. I mean, in my heart of hearts, do I think that he's real? I don't know. Probably not. But I believe it. It's like Santa Claus, son. It's more fun if he's real too. No, I don't believe in Santa Claus. How about you, man?
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely do. Big fan of all that cryptid stuff. Ghosts, aliens. I'm here for all.
Dude, what about the Loch Ness Monster?
Yeah, I don't know. John shaking his head. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not with that. It's too.
I think
fake.
it's some logs and like maybe a big eel or something. But yeah,
I 100% believed in the Loch Ness Monster when I was like in 7th grade. I was balls deep. I was like, dude, it's gotta be real. But now I'm like, yeah, it was kind of stupid back then. There was a lot of shit that I used to be pretty wild, but definitely big on these. But actually, dude, I want to be respectful of your time. And tell people where they can find you. Have you written any books? It's time for the shameless plug. It's that time.
I don't really have a ton. I mean, people can Google me, I guess. I don't have social media. Like I said, I'm not on Twitter. Although, should I be? Should I get on Instagram? I'm not on Instagram.
Get on the gram, dude. Get on the gram.
What are the benefits of me being on the gram?
Well, I mean, there's multiple benefits. Like, you can really follow some badass people that you can give you some. It's also, well, let me tell you the pros, and then I'm going to tell you the cons. Okay. Pros: there's a lot of very creative, awesome people. Cons: there's a lot of thirst traps and girls that are trying to sell their OnlyFans. That's a dark road. Okay. Don't go down it.
Okay, great.
Use Instagram for inspiration. Another con: you also can just continue to stay connected to people and lurk on them and see what's going on in their lives and never actually go out of your way to talk to them. So that's a con, in my opinion, because I feel like maybe you pick up the phone, but you just kind of keep following people. Or if you're vindictive, you could look at like who you used to date and if they've gotten fat and celebrate if they have, and maybe get sad and do something if they haven't. I don't know, but those are some of the pros and cons. Then there's a whole multitude, but I would say give it a whirl, man, or just say fuck it and get on Reddit like a real person. Okay.
All right. I'm not on any of those things currently, but maybe I will be by the time people are listening to this. But I don't know. People can Google me. I'm on the internet, I guess. I don't have a lot to plug.
I actually Googled you. I think it was DC mugshots. Like that was. No, I'm just kidding.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'll plug. I was just home at my parents for Thanksgiving, and I found my Game Boy Color. It's right here, and it still works. So if you think you've got one laying around somewhere, I bet it probably still works. So that's my plug for you. Let's find your Game Boy Colors, people.
Spreading bits of knowledge. Well, folks, that's all we got for you today. Thanks for listening. If you're listening to us on Apple, give us a 5-star review. If you think we're worthy, if you think we're deserving of that, we would appreciate it. It helps the show grow. Go ahead and subscribe. Slap that subscribe button at Rick's Mind, RIKS. That's Rick's Mind, RIKS. Type that into YouTube. Hit subscribe. You're going to love it. Helps us grow. We need to really work on that. We're late to the YouTube game. So come on aboard. Thanks for listening. Love you guys. See you motherfuckers next week. Peace.